Welcome, everyone. Really excited today to talk about data, tools, and training for enhancing hazmat rail response. So timely and comprehensive training and communication with field responders is essential for ensuring the safe and effective management of rail emergencies involving hazardous materials. Really excited today to be joined by John Fleps, the Vice President of Safety at Norfolk Southern, and with Jennifer White, past president of NENA, past ECC director, field responder. Thank you both so much for joining us today. Really, really grateful to have you here. Maybe we could start with just a little bit of quick background. John, if you could give us a little bit of your background and history.
Absolutely. So I have worked in the Class 1 railroad space for my entire professional career. I started with Norfolk Southern straight out of college 17 years ago. I have spent my entire career in field operations in a bunch of different capacities and really spanning all branches of operations, particularly in our engineering group. But I had the privilege of being able to transition into the Chief Safety Officer role earlier this year and have safety is my business. That's my job, and helping to not only propel Norfolk Southern safety culture forward, but also the relationships that we establish with the communities that we interact with and that we operate through all across the country.
I love the safety is my business, because that is ours too. I didn't introduce myself. I'll interject for a moment. So my name's Dan Seidberg. I'm the president and co-founder of I Am Responding, and I lead our field responder unit here at Rapid SOS. So Jen, love to turn it over to you to talk about background and history a little bit before we get started on this.
Yeah, thanks. So Jen White, I, as Dan mentioned, come from the public safety space, 26 years in a PSAP as a PSAP director and as a field paramedic that time as well. So both sides of the spectrum in the field and in the 911 ECC as well. Had the privilege to serve on a lot of state and national committees, including serving as the president of NENA before joining Rapid SOS as a regional manager. So happy to be here.
Wonderful. Well, thank you both. John, why don't we get started with you? So back in 2015, Norfolk Southern launched Operation Awareness and Response, which has gone on to train tens of thousands of field responders. Can you tell us a little bit about the role OR plays in Norfolk Southern's commitment to safety and why it was launched?
Absolutely. So OAR, the OR program, is just it's a strong component of our commitment to training first responders, and most importantly, building relationships with first responders across our entire network. Norfolk Southern operates through 22 states, 18,000 route miles, and you can imagine there are thousands of communities, big cities, small one-stop-like towns all across our network. And we have a commitment and an obligation to the communities that we operate through, and a lot of that obligation to deliver safe service is contingent on our relationships with first responders. So in 2015, we launched the OAR program, which really kind of took our first responder training to another level. We have a safety train that is literally a grouping of rail cars and a really cool locomotive that's painted with 911 first responders. It's actually the NS 911 is the unit number. And we take it all across the country to conduct field training, to give first responders the opportunity to put their hands on the equipment that they're going to engage with, to go beyond just the classroom and ensure that they have exposure to the unique components, the unique situations, and an opportunity to engage with our emergency response specialists, our hazmat team, to help prepare them. But the most important part about the OAR program is relationships. Building that relationship in a non-emergency situation is critical to a solid response if and when that time does come. And it's been invaluable. We train 5,000 people a year, and we're going to deliver on that commitment this year as well. It's really important to our obligation and our commitment to the communities that we serve to make this program really impactful for first responders.
I love the train concept and the NS 911. Love that particularly. Can you dig a little bit deeper just into what some of the training and tools and resources are that Norfolk Southern's been able to provide through this program, and how that program helps keep communities safe?
Sure. So first and foremost, you don't work in the railroad environment each and every day. So this is a really important opportunity for our specialists to be able to talk about some of the unique hazards, risks that first responders can find themselves in when they're in the rail environment. There can be a common misconception that just because there's something going on near the tracks that all trains are stopped. And that's not always the truth, depending on the nature of the incident and how that incident has been conveyed to the railroad. There may be train traffic that's still involved, and we want to ensure that first responders know how to contact us, what the communication protocol is, and how to interact with an incident near rail infrastructure safely. That's kind of just step one. When you start going into a rail specific incident, you think about the type of cars and equipment that you may encounter. Tank cars, there are tons of different fittings, valves, connections, the way that you deal with some of the hazards that are associated with those materials and how they are protected in the different type of cars. There are a lot of different what if situations. So the program is designed to literally let first responders put their hands on the valves, on the manways, climb up on the car, get inside of a locomotive, look at the engine bay, understand what they could potentially be dealing with, so that when that unlikely call does occur, it's not the first time that they're encountering this situation. It's important for us to also, again, really establish those relationships. So if they feel like they need to call somebody, they know somebody at Norfolk Southern who is a specialist, who can answer questions, who can help kind of guide them through, some of the early decisions that are required when responding to an emergency. It's all about, making every second count. And in this business, obviously seconds do count. And this is just another way for us to ensure that happens.
That's great. And truest at its core, that these relationships are what are so important in protecting both the responders and their communities. What have you seen as the impact of OR so far? What kind of feedback have you gotten from the first responder community to that program?
It's really positive. If we do a full scale drill or we do a tabletop drill with, with a firehouse or a volunteer firefighter community, their ability to kind of practice and put the skills and training to the test with rail context in play, it really goes beyond just a rail specific response. And I've been to a bunch of these events myself. It's always a bonding experience. You do a lot of camaraderie and a genuine appreciation for the time that we take to really ensure that we're offering this training free of charge. And we get people that come year after year to some of the locations that we ensure that we go to each year. But we also make sure that we offer this to small communities, and we reach out as broadly as we possibly can, so that everybody has an opportunity. We stood up a regional training facility earlier this year in the state of Ohio to give extra training opportunity to anyone in the state, regardless of whether or not we operate through those communities. We had well over 300 first responders show up just in a matter of a couple of weeks, and those relationships, they bear fruit when it matters. So very important to us.
That's wonderful. So, John, we're really excited about partnering with Norfolk Southern in your pursuit of enhancing rail safety. How does this partnership between Norfolk Southern and Rapid SOS complement and enhance the work you've been doing with the OAR program?
Our partnership with Rapid SOS is all about getting the right intelligence to the people who need it consistently and quickly under all circumstances. We want to ensure that any first responder who's going to be responding to a rail accident is protected before they get there. They know what they're getting themselves into, that they have information about the contents of the train that they may be involved with, and most importantly, what are the requirements when responding to an emergency that involves a particular material, particular substance. And what they need to be thinking about, what they need to be briefing about well before they get there. The connection that we have through Rapid SOS to get that information consistently to the people who need it, to get it to the ECCs in a matter that's easy to digest and easy to understand, and also deliver it quickly is really important. The one thing about the OAR program is we may train somebody in 2023 who may not need to use their training for 5 years, for 10 years. There's potential for some loss of muscle memory there, and Rapid SOS is a stopgap to help fill a voids, to ensure that the critical information that a first responder needs is going to be at their fingertips, irregardless of the amount of time that's transpired between their physical training and the event that they're responding to.
And so important to get that enhanced information before they're getting to the scene, before literally the wheels are turning on the way out of the station. So they, as you said, so they know what they're getting before they get there. Jen, that's probably a really good transition as you're there. Really, from an ECC and field responder perspective, Jen, what's the importance and impact of this partnership and the data that's going to be provided by Norfolk Southern to both the ECCs and the field responders that have rail passing through their jurisdictions?
Yeah, to kind of piggyback on some of the things John said, it's about making sure that we have the intelligent data about that event to the right people at the right time, even ahead of their response. So that is one thing that makes the partnership so unique with Rapid SOS, is that information is delivered at the time of the incident into the ECC prior to the phone ringing and all the calls coming in. But it's also actionable data, and it's intelligent data about that event. So then it goes to the field responders through the platform prior to the tones going off, or at the same time the tones are going off, so they can prepare to what they're responding to ahead of time. It helps in mutual aid situations to make sure that the right resources are tagged and dispatched even before they leave the station in some scenarios. And it really takes things from a field response level to where they're more educated. The ECC is able to give them the right information at the right time. They can make better educated decisions even before they get there. And it takes away that part of being so reactive. When you get on scene and you're in these low frequency, high intense situations and trying to make decisions on the fly, it actually takes all of that away from you, because you're actually prepared and responding intelligently as you're going to the call.
So John had mentioned muscle memory, and we've talked in the past, as you and I have talked about this, about workflows and daily workflows. So what's the importance of providing not just the intelligent data, but that intelligent data within the same workflows that are used every day? Why is that so important to providing a proper, intelligent, and timely emergency response?
So many reasons on the ECC side and on the field responder side for it to be in a method that they're accustomed to in their normal workflow. The ECC is going to be inundated with the calls that are coming in, the alarm data that's coming in, and then also obviously coordinating the response and working with the field units. So taking anything outside of their normal workflows is going to cause some delays, some confusion. So providing the data that's intelligent and targeted to that event to the ECC in their normal workflow as they're processing these calls is going to ensure that there's no pauses. We've heard of some calls recently where the telecommunicator wasn't prepared because there's no protocol for certain things that happen. And, I'll reference, a lot of you've probably seen it on different platforms, but the fighter pilot ejection situation that's been shared out is not something that 911 centers have a protocol for, right? So the telecommunicator did a fantastic job of trying to respond to that event by going into protocols that she had to pull from. However, no matter what she was trying to do, there's still some confusion and pauses and delays in how to respond to something you're not accustomed to responding to. So by giving that information in a workflow that they're familiar with, it takes out those potential delays and pauses and confusions and ensures that the delivery of the information is given to the right responders at the right time. On the field side, it's important because, again, they're responding and trying to mitigate the situation that could have life hazards and safety hazards community involvement, and taking them on a scene and asking them to step outside of what their normal protocol or workflow is going to cause that same confusion, delay, hindrance into the actual response of the scene. So the information needs to be intelligent, it needs to be targeted, but it is essential that it's in a workflow pattern that the ECC is accustomed to, as well as the field responder, so that they can process that accordingly.
Yeah, and I think that's part of what's so important about this partnership. And John mentioned it, you mentioned it, between muscle memory and the fact that it could be 5, 10, even 20 years between somebody receiving training on a rail incident and experience or being involved in either dispatching for it or responding to. And you end up then in that situation where you're going to fall back to the tools and flows that you use every single day, and presenting this data into those flows is really so important. I don't know, John, if you want to add anything into that from your experience in talking about this through in the training that you guys have done in the field.
It's spot on. I mean, what we do in the rail industry is unique, and having familiarity is crucial to a safe, efficient response. You know, whether it's the training that we help issue to first responders, or like you mentioned, the information that they're used to receiving on a mobile device, or digesting through a briefing that they receive at the firehouse. You know, we want there to be some familiarity with the information and the intelligence that's getting pushed out, and it needs to be consistent, and it needs to be timely. And with rail incidents, as with all emergencies, every second counts, and this is just another way to help close those gaps.
It's wonderful. So I want to circle back full circle, if we can, to the importance of programs like OAR and partnerships like the one between Norfolk Southern and Rapid SOS. So I'll ask both of you, and John, maybe I'll start with you, can you each talk about why it's so important for organizations like Norfolk Southern to build strong relationships with the public safety community, be it ECCs, field responders, or all first responders?
I mean, at the end of the day, we count on these folks. They are heroes. We saw that on display earlier this year with a significant incident that occurred on our track. We need to ensure that we can do everything we possibly can to equip those heroes, those first responders, with the tools, with the intelligence, with the data that they need, so that they can execute their job safely to fulfill their obligation, which is to protect the public. And we realize that a rail incident isn't something that happens every day. But when the phone rings, when that call goes out, that first responder, they're coming irregardless. So we want to set them up for success. We want to ensure they can do their job safely. We are 100% committed to every community that we operate through, and that means we're committed to every first responder who may ultimately take one of those calls. It's something that we're passionate about. Safety is at the core of what we do. Everything that we do starts with safety, and that includes an emergency response. Those relationships are critical. Trust is critical. The OAR program has been a crucial step towards forging those relationships and really solidifying trust.
That's great. How about Jen? That was the same question to you about why it's so important for organizations like Norfolk Southern to build relationships with the public safety community, ECCs, and field responders.
Yeah, so a couple of things. One is the partnerships. You don't want to introduce people that are necessary for a response during the actual emergency, if at all possible. And while they're doing amazing things, training a broad class of field responders and offering that training, which is amazing, they can't reach every first responder. It's just impossible, no matter how hard they try. So that's why it's so important to partner like we are with the Rapid SOS platform, so that they can reach every responder. Because now, as he mentioned earlier, we're closing that gap. So even if they've not been able to make it to the training center or the free training that the railroad's providing, they now still will obtain the same information at the time of the incident, prior to building those relationships, so the responders know who to call. What's the protocol if I need more information? How does my ECC get this information? All of that's super important. And then circling back to the ECC, who sometimes is left out of that responder role whenever we're doing training. That's obviously one of the main reasons that we're excited about this partnership too, is to ensure that that ECC, the situation I mentioned earlier, I hope that we can sit here and say that there's never a telecommunicator that feels unprepared or stressed out when they're having to deal with a potential rail emergency, because now they have all the tools and all the resources through one platform that has intelligent data to get to the right person at the right time in their normal workflow that doesn't add anything to them. So I'm hoping that all of that relationship building will make sure that that's the end goal.
Yeah, and so John, you had mentioned heroes, and this is really about not just the information to better protect the communities, but also to protect the lives and safety of the responders going on the field and out into the field onto those calls, and having this intelligent data, the train consist information, hazardous materials information before again the wheels turn going out of the station is really so critical to the protection of both the responders and the community. So I want to close with this. I was doing a little bit of reading, John, and I came across a quote that really stuck out at me, and it was from Alan Shaw, your president and CEO of Norfolk Southern. And I just want to read it for a moment and then chat with you about it for a moment if we could. So the quote was, "Our commitment to safe rail operations is reflected in the relationships we build with local first responders across our network. These professionals are everyday heroes who devote their careers to protecting property and life in the communities we serve, and we want to make available the tools and resources that they need to respond safely and effectively to any rail-related incident. We at Norfolk Southern value their support, courage, and partnership." So here's what struck out to me most about that. We could so easily take the words Norfolk Southern in that last sentence and insert Rapid SOS, and I could put the name of Michael Martin, our CEO, at the bottom of that, and it would say exactly the same thing with the same meaning, which to me reflects so strongly on the partnership that we have with Norfolk Southern about the commitment to the same mission of, as you've said, I think 3 times here, about safety is our primary, safety is our business. So I'd love to have you reflect on that as we close this session out.
Yeah, I mean, Alan nailed it. And I can tell you that that commitment is incredibly genuine. At the end of the day, we have a big network, but the community is small, and we are 100% committed to the safety of the communities we operate through, and also to the first responders that we're counting on to kind of be the bridge between what happens on our property and how that affects the community. We care about everybody who is affected by something like this, whether it's a big incident or small. And, it really boils down to those relationships and, how we can prove and show first responders that we care about them, and we're going to do everything we can to ensure that their safety comes first and foremost when we expect them to come help us deal with a problem on our property.
Really appreciate that. And John, Jennifer, really appreciate you joining in this session here today. Really appreciate the information. Love the partnership. Look forward to working even more closely with you, John, as we move forward through this. To all of our attendees who are watching this, please remember to fill out the surveys at the end of these sessions, and we hope you can participate in as many of these as you can throughout Ready23. And again, John, Jennifer, thank you so much for joining us today. Really greatly appreciate it. Thank you.
Thanks, Dan.